everyone, to Weathering the Storm. This is number 2, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, I guess so. The first proper one, anyway.
Proper one? I have you know we're professionals for doing this. Yeah, my name's Clenton Farquharson, and basically the podcast is about how we can look at courage, hope, and the possibilities and some of the great work that local area coordination, individuals and the managers and communities are doing. And it's trying to remember and keep hold of some of those great stuff that local area coordination is doing, especially in this time of COVID-19.
Absolutely. And I'm Nick Sinclair, like Clenton, extremely passionate about local area coordination and keen to hear as many stories as we can during this strange time from across the network. And today we had our first interview with the man who brought it to the UK and has spearheaded it in this country.
It was a brilliant conversation from my perspective. You just can feel his passion and his, kindness, that individuals and communities mean a lot to him, talking about connections and belonging and relationships. And that's what it's all about. It's about people want a life, not a service. Absolutely. And he embodies all of that.
He does. But like you say, he's someone with great integrity, great authenticity, and you hear that when he speaks. So this is Ralph Broad talking about his experiences of bringing it to the UK and what he hopes and dreams for the future.
Good to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes, too right. And where are you? Are you in this country or in Australia?
I'm home at the moment. So I managed to get back last week, one of the last planes leaving Australia.
Ralph, would you mind starting off by telling us a little bit about the local area coordination journey to England and Wales and how we've got to this point here?
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, my apologies. You and everyone who's listening knows how much I speak. So,
we've got the beauty of editing, Ralph. The beauty of editing. Don't you worry about that.
That's great. Hey, look, I'll take you right back then. So, just thinking about it, I've been really fortunate to have had a long direct and indirect involvement of local area coordination over a long time, since the early 90s in Australia and more recently in Scotland, England, Wales, and now Singapore. So it's been a really rich opportunity for me to personally learn and to try and improve and to experience the challenge every time we meet new people in new communities and new systems. So I worked within a multidisciplinary community-based team in disability services in Western Australia before, during and after local area coordination first started there. Being part of that specialist team, we always felt frustrated. We had limits on the scope of what we could do and how long we could work with people. So sort of caught in that people who come to us late in crisis, we'd do what we could within our service model of fixing a person's specific needs within a certain time period, and then we'd have to back off and go do something else. And then we thought we would have loved to have done more, but we lacked the time, and also we lacked that connection and knowledge of community. We were in a statutory function, so the relationship was different. So a whole range of things were happening at that time. And that's exactly the sort of feedback we now get in all our conversations with our service partners. It doesn't matter which country, it's the same. Really important people doing good specialist work, but there's limitations. We also knew that people were returning to us over and over and over, and we're fixing the same problems, probably because we didn't have time to respond to the issues that were driving those problems. The issues around family or unemployment or loneliness or disconnection, a whole range of things. And we always wished we could do more. When local area coordination started to be introduced, we were quite sceptical, or I was, because we'd been taught that we were the experts, that local area coordination was saying that people and families and communities are the experts. We thought we already do what all of local area coordination does. There was some truth, so we did a little bit of local area coordination, but local area coordination is a much, much bigger, connected way of working, and it took a while for that to sink in. And to be honest, we probably thought it was a little bit of a threat to our roles as well in our future. I found out really quickly that by working together with the local area coordinators in my specialist role and then later in my non-government role in Western Australia, actually the outcomes were much better, much quicker, and they're much more sustainable. And through working together, we could deliver much better outcomes than we could separately. So that's one of the early bits of learning for me when I was in the system. One of the things that also started happening, we could see the system starting to change around us within the disability world. That our behaviours, our roles started to change for the better. The way we had conversations with people started to shift as well. So this is all started the learning that I started to collect and to hold on to. Most importantly, we were feeling that people and families were needing us less, which is great. So complete opposite of what was happening before. I then moved on to be manager of a disability program and a non-government organisation, a provider organisation. And we worked really closely again with the local area coordinator in that locality. And the relationship was fabulous. So mutual support, we got better knowledge of community. They could help us to connect with stuff. They'd be alongside people doing some resilience building and connection, and when we were doing some of our specialist intervention as well. So again, the two things together were really, really good. So seeing it from both sides was quite handy. When we moved back to the UK, I was then a director of a provider organisation in Scotland. And that was at the same time as local area coordination was introduced as part of their reform of disability services right across Scotland. And so I was lucky enough to be involved with Eddie and some of the leaders there around some of the early design and development of local area coordination. And that was really useful when we started to think about getting started in England and Wales a few years later. Because looking at Western Australia, across Australia and Scotland, we could see the very best and also the very worst of local area coordination, the really good design and the really good values, and bits where maybe the system had pulled it back and diluted it. One was really strong and with really consistent outcomes, and one was much weaker. So the strong design stuff had a huge impact. So we started to use that Australian and Scotland learning to inform how to start building it in England and Wales. Really, really wanting to avoid the things we could see that could damage outcomes and damage change and disenfranchise people that much more quickly. So when we started having conversations in England and Wales, the first question I asked was, is there any reason why local area coordination couldn't have the same value alongside other people in the community, other than people with disabilities? So in Western Australia, it started with disabilities, intellectual or learning disabilities to start, and then moved across alongside people facing a different range of disabilities. We couldn't think of a reason why it wouldn't work because of the universal nature of the values, the principles and the practice. And we're also very keen to move away from the silo-based working, putting people in boxes based on their service label or their service use, given that people are more than their service label and that everyone is unique, everyone is different, everyone has something to offer. So our conversations in England started on that premise that this is around the whole person, the whole family, the whole community, and across the whole system. We're looking at people in their entirety, their gifts, their skills, their aspirations, their connections, their contribution, as well as the things they find difficult or challenging. Because that more reflects who we are as people. And I think over the last 10 years in local area coordination in England and Wales, we've seen exactly the same outcomes as the very, very strongest of local area coordination in Western Australia, irrespective of age, irrespective of background, irrespective of culture, irrespective of place, irrespective of history. The same stuff keeps happening if it's really, really well designed, it's driven and led by people, and we're having the right conversations and the right relationships with the people, their family, the community and the service system. So in England and Wales, we started building conversations in 2008 with some workshops in the Northeast. The system was, and probably still is now, quite cluttered. So people reflected that the system was really complicated. It's hard to get help early when you needed it. Quite often, people would change all the time. So to keep retelling your story, and your story might be very difficult to tell. It was very hard to reach someone in the community that could help. If you're finding life difficult, that was much more difficult as well. The system waited for crisis before anyone would respond. And the crisis had to be really significant. Responding through testing people's deficits, they'd be assessing people's needs, looking at all things people can't do and then making judgments about what service to provide in response to those needs. So only looking at a very small part of people's lives. This isn't a judgment on the people and those services. This is just the way the system has evolved. So it's real focus on deficits. And then we test eligibility to see if people are bad enough. If they're not bad enough, they go back to the beginning of the queue again and have to get worse before they can get service support. And this is both, it's not the right way to work. There's something morally not quite right, but actually it's really financially incompetent as well because it stores up cost. it stores up harm, and it damages individuals, families and communities. So the early conversations in England and Wales started to explore all that type of stuff. Can we think in a different way based on 20 years of evidence, longitudinal, uninterrupted evidence in Western Australia and across Australia? Can we start to think differently? So we had some early conversations in the northeast of England. Out of that, there was one amazing leader in Middlesbrough who stood up and said, yes, we want to do this. We can see now how this fits with our transformation. It fits with ideas around personalisation and self-direction. But actually, yes, the whole community should have access to this because everyone in our community matters. Building on the evidence from Middlesbrough, some of the early adopters, as in Derby City, and Thurrock and Swansea, started to join up and also get that support to develop strong, evidence-based, values-led local area coordination. And they've subsequently continued to grow within. In very difficult times, they're getting very strong, consistent outcomes and continue to expand. And since then, of course, the network has also started to grow. The network itself formed as a national organisation to help as a resource, as a point of shared learning, and is now moving from strength to strength through the work of Nick and Clenton and all you guys, all the people who make up the network. And it's built on 14 independent evaluations, which is really, really cool.
My question with what you've just said, what resonates for me, Ralph, is you mentioned the values and principles. What one core value or principle do you think is the utmost that needs to be upheld?
I probably would say this is a cop-out, but I think it's the combination of a range of things that make local area coordination work, I think. I suppose some of the really important stuff, though, does start at the start in that every person, every family, every community is unique. Every person, family, community has gifts, strengths, contributions, something to offer. And everyone has some things that sometimes are difficult and might need support. And if we start with that conversation, building a trusting relationship with people, explore and understand what's important, what they can do for themselves, how their family and friends and community can help, and also what they can offer to other people. We're not just recipients. That journey from service user to citizen, valued contributing citizen, is central to what we do. If we're only seeing people as people requiring help, people who are service users or clients or participants or customers, we're still playing that power game of powerful people telling less powerful people what they have to do. And they're not taking into account what's important to the person. And I think through the beautiful local area coordination stories, including in this time of COVID-19, is about continuing to nurture or support that contribution of all people to help other people, to be alongside, to be looking out for, to be sharing. And that includes everyone. People who have service labels attached are still offering as well as receiving. Probably one of the most important things we do is we take time to listen and build a trusting relationship where the person is in control. Our job is to listen, learn, and be alongside in whatever way makes sense for that person to help them to move in the direction they wish to move. And hopefully using some of our connections and our knowledge of community and other people, we can start to pull things together and offer alternatives that people can choose from. We don't signpost, we don't tell people, we don't instruct. We're not navigating or prescribing. We're helping people to make choices. Very, very different, and really focusing on the natural and the sustainable, what anyone else would do to solve problems or reach their aspirations.
You mentioned, Ralph, about COVID-19. Our podcast is about weathering the storm, and we just want to remind people that it's temporary. And my question to you, Ralph, is what do you think local area coordination is going to look like in the future?
Hey, look, I think it's clear that at a time of national crisis, where local area coordination has been nurtured and maintained and there's strong leadership supporting it, it's been central to the response to COVID in the community. There's something unique that local area coordination is doing alongside a whole range of other beautiful stuff as well. And we have been pulled out of balance. So think about local area coordination at its strongest is about coming alongside people early and building their resilience and their capacity and their connections. And being accessible in the community if life is becoming difficult and there's a risk of dependency or crisis, and helping them to build their connections to pull back and back into community, and also alongside people who are already dependent to help them to to reduce that dependency. So that's having that all working in balance is core local area coordination. Now, that's where we want to get back to. But now we are quite rightly in a place where there's a pandemic and there's crisis. So we're focusing more on the crisis end. Now, I think that's absolutely legitimate. But the good thing is the stories I've heard and keep getting repeated, and this is both in Western Australia, other parts of Australia that I was in the last couple of months, and the stories from here, is that whilst local area coordinators are being involved in those people who are highly isolated, I'm not too keen on the term, but feeling vulnerable, they're also doing what they should be doing. They're still taking time, they're listening, they're connecting, they're understanding the resources available in community and helping to mobilise that with other amazing community people to benefit all those people in community who might be at risk of being left behind. It's just we're focusing much more on that crisis end. So I think that's a really appropriate place to be at the moment, while still remembering that this is a temporary thing, as you said. Now, the risk is that the service system starts to harden once we come through this, and things that community are best at doing get replaced by services again, or government. So formal volunteering or formal services destabilising natural community, people helping people stuff. So making sure we can work together with communities and leaders and service partners to get these things working together again in the way it should be working. Local area coordination and communities and services working carefully together to build resilience, to stay stronger. So next time there's a crisis, we're in an even better place than we were last time. So all of this is about making the most of what we've got now, but preparing ourselves when something goes wrong next time. Every time we have a crisis in this country, we think, oh, isn't it good? Communities come together at the point of crisis. When actually what we should be doing is thinking, why aren't we doing this all the time? And then when we do reach crisis, the whole community is in a stronger place to respond and look out for each other and look out for people. And I think some of the stories I've heard from England and Wales have been really, really good with that. It's obvious that the work of local area coordinators in communities with their connections, with the people who are finding life tough, but the connections with people who can offer support in the community has mobilised community responses really, really quickly. That is fantastic. It's really, really inspiring stuff. And we're not the only ones. There's lots of other good things happening, but through working together with those other things, stuff has happened more quickly. Where we're unique is we've got that deep connection with the people who may have complex and enduring life situations that they face, and they're quite disconnected from community and services. So we're hoping to make that possible for everyone.
One of the most powerful things that I've heard from coordinators around this, Ralph, that people who have lived experience of facing isolation or facing loneliness in their life have been able to help people who are very new to it, connecting via their coordinator with other people in their community online and over the phone, and helping
Fantastic.
them to understand how to deal with it. And I think that just shows how sometimes people are labelled as, or basically written off by the system, but actually people's experiences are their strengths at the same time. And if we're able to have a relationship with them where we can tap into that and make the most of that, that's what's uniquely powerful, I think.
Absolutely. And that creating that space so people who would otherwise be seen as service users or recipients, are active contributors in sharing the expertise of their own lived experience. That's amazing. And again, the more informal, the better sometimes. And then you can build a relationship on top of learning from someone else's experience. So we can start to get this multi-layered effect and be more connected through sharing other people's experiences. So not only are people learning and feeling more reassured, they're building relationships, reducing isolation and loneliness, they're contributing. Lots of stuff can happen if we think a little bit outside of the service boundaries. So what we do want, as things start to settle, is to gradually get it back into balance. Otherwise, the risk is we just have a bunch of new crisis service workers, and there's enough crisis service workers. You'll never get out of that cycle of only being falling into crisis and responding too late. We still need to move back upstream so that we work that whole system approach. Early prevention right down to deep dependency on service to tell people to come back and create their own lifestyles.
Thank you very much for that, Ralph. It's made me think, so what message would you send to coordinators and managers currently weathering the storm?
When I hear the work that they're doing, I feel both inspired and really emotional, hearing about the work they're doing, the efforts they go to, under really difficult circumstances, as are lots of other people. But what they're doing works, and it's so important. What you guys do, if I'm speaking directly, has a positive impact on the lives of all the people in the communities that you serve, but in particular, making that community stronger through the involvement and valuing of all the people that live in the community, including those who are normally excluded or isolated or labelled. And in times of crisis like this, you suddenly see that huge, huge value. I don't think you guys can possibly realise how important your role is. And I suppose one of the big things is hold on to what works. Even when we're being dragged into a space that feels a bit uncomfortable, it's the right thing at the right time. But it does mean, as long as we uphold the core values, the core beliefs, the ways of being alongside people in a way that's respectful and nurturing and recognises their authority and expertise, even in crisis, we'll then continue to create that space for choice, control, positive change, contribution, mutual support and safety. That type of stuff, it doesn't change even though we're in crisis. That's the stuff that really, really works. And even when we're under pressure, that taking time to build a relationship of trust is everything. We'll have to move a little bit more quickly because of circumstance, but if we move too quickly, we're in that exact space we spent 10 years here and 30 years internationally trying to get away from. And I think it gives that chance to reassure people, to connect, to celebrate their contribution, and to help them to imagine different and better. I really like that idea of continuing to imagine the possible, especially if things have been good in the past. We can build, we can think about opportunities in places where we live. Even if we're isolated in our bedroom, we can still find ways of connecting, celebrating, reassuring, that type of stuff. And I think even though we're in crisis, what we're still doing is building resilience. We're still working with communities to understand the role that we all have in communities alongside everyone in that community. So this is all the wonderful stuff that you guys are doing. And I can say, hand on heart, that the new work that's starting in Western Australia is delivering exactly the same outcomes, and it's based exactly on the work that we've done in England and Wales. Because it's a universal way of working in terms of good human practice, and they're getting exactly the same outcomes in a different context, with different culture, different history, different environments, but they're universal themes around human ways of being together. What you do works. Keep it going. That's my message. It's amazing. And find ways to look after yourselves and stay connected with your network. Your network is an amazing resource, and it's something we would like to replicate internationally as well.
Thank you, Ralph. That was a really powerful message, and I think that'll help a lot of people who are going through a lot of change right now and are trying to hold on to their personal values, the values of local area coordination, the thing that got them into this in the first place. And it is really inspiring to hear now, a few weeks in from the coordinators, how those emergency systems are now in place and people are starting to be able to think about the bigger picture again. But I think what's remarkable for local area coordinators is how, as individuals, they're able to turn their hands to change so quickly and able to really use their knowledge, their relationships, their skills and experience to come up with very creative, practical solutions very quickly. And I think we've seen that play out really clearly in this crisis too.
It's something about communities are great at choosing good people, and the local area coordinators are people with a wonderful set of core values that want to do the right thing, that respects and builds on the capacity and contribution of all people. Amazing, inspiring group of people. Some of the thinking that's happening in Western Australia, which hopefully will bear fruit, those very early days, and something that Eddie and I have been talking about as well, is the importance of local area coordination, now thinking about England and Wales, as being supported and understood as a significant and important national part of recovery and rebuilding post-COVID. So if we can imagine a new system, what would it look like? Especially if local area coordination was a core part. If we're rebuilding a new system now, would we build what we already have? I don't think anyone would say yes. But we've got probably a once-in-a-lifetime chance through crisis to reimagine how we do stuff. And the evidence is really strong if this works well in community and in the system. And that's probably a really important conversation now we need to have, both in the existing areas and nationally. Let's not default too far back into service thinking. Let's get this balance really solid now around strong specialist services alongside very intentional local area coordination and associated strength-based working. I think it's the only way to rebuild and recover from what has probably been the most devastating thing in our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
To me, I hope the coordinators and the managers hold on to courage, hope, and let's reimagine what that possibility can be. And that's, for me, is where I want local area coordination to be, in that space. You know, yeah, this is temporary. We're going to weather the storm, but it's the dedication of the individual local area coordinators and the managers upholding that hope for individuals and communities. You can help reposition the purpose for people with courage and hope. So thank you very much, Ralph. It's really, really useful to hear the principles of why local area coordination is so important.
The most enjoyable part of my life has been local coordination in England and Wales, and there's something amazing happening that courage and hope bit really resonates with me. That there is hope. The rebuilding stuff is already happening. If we can start to do that at the wider systems level, it can make a significant difference across all parts of England and Wales. So let's keep the conversations going. And I know people from Australia and Singapore would love to get involved in this podcast and conversation as well sometime.
Just before you finish, we just wanted to know what you're doing personally to not go stir crazy during this time.
Well, it might be a bit late for that, but things like this. So, do you know what? Will sound a bit worky, I suppose, but because I stay in touch with you a lot, Nick, and hear some of the amazing stories from England and Wales, and I'm staying in contact with the folk in Australia and hearing amazing stories from them. I tell you what, it keeps you going, which is really good. In the non-work stuff, I walk through the fields with my dog. It's not bad, you know, and lots of chats with families. So I've Skyped with my sister, my mum and dad, and also one of the local coordination managers in Western Australia all today. So we just keep in touch with each other and help each other through slightly awkward times.
For me, I just want to say thank you for your kindness and sharing your thoughts, Ralph. I've always been passionate about local area coordination, so thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Clenton. And look, meeting up with you has been really important for me and for the network. Your continuing contribution will be fabulous. Really, really appreciate it. And to Nick as well. Nick has taken over the network in its infancy and is building something really, really good, taking it far beyond where I left it. And our ongoing work together, I hope, will continue long into the future. And I'm learning lots from both of you guys and hopefully bringing stuff back as well.
Likewise, it's been a privilege for me to have two of the most inspiring people in my life on the same screen at the same time. So,
hey, luckily nobody can see my beard. Hey,
yeah, I haven't had a shave.
Actually, I haven't either. Look, you can see there.
Yeah. Oh,
terrible. Yeah.
So that's the other thing I've been doing to not go stir crazy. I've been growing my beard. How about that?
Yeah. Like watching
different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Thank you,
We'll
Ralph.
speak again soon.
Bye-bye.